Welcome, everybody. This is the EA Global Summit 2020, the virtual conference connecting global EA practitioners. This is Nizam. I'm from the EA Global Summit team, and we have Tom O'Reilly, the COO of Sparx Systems, joining us today, who will be presenting on EA 15.2, the latest and the greatest. The latest release that's just come last week. So we've been seeing a fantastic response, over 1,000 people attending this conference, and we have a great lineup of speakers and sophisticated collaboration platform to give you all the best experience of attending this conference. Please connect and interact with the speaker and other practitioners after the session by joining our Teams channel. We'll be sharing the channel to collaborate in the chat window during the session. We welcome you all once again, and we'll be transferring to Tom for a fantastic session on EA 15.2. Welcome, Tom.
Thanks for that, Nizam.
And you should be able to share your screen now.
Okay. How does that look?
Yes, great. We're all able to see, and we are all ready.
Excellent. Well, good morning, afternoon, and evening, everybody. Thank you very much for joining me today. I understand that some of you are here on your Sunday evening, so definitely appreciate that for the guys in the US. My name's Tom O'Reilly. I'm the Chief Operations Officer for Sparx Systems, and today we're going to have a look at the 15.2 beta release, which came out as fresh as mid last week, I believe. So a little bit about who we are. It seems kind of obvious, but we'll do it anyway. So who we are, we're Sparx Systems. We produce Enterprise Architect. First commercially released in the year 2000. So close to, well, over 20 years worth of commercial development has gone into this single tool already. Our user base is over 800,000 paid users worldwide, so really large user base there. And the tools is specifically designed for specifying complex systems with tools for everyone inside the organization. So it's really growing up to help everyone in your organization, from your enterprise architect type people to your systems engineers, your business folk, managers, developers, testers, your database guys, and much, much more. We're in all industries that you can imagine. So anyone who is doing any sort of software engineering, any sort of complex information modeling, then there's a use for our tool in those industries. So aerospace, aviation, banking, utilities, government, pharmaceuticals, healthcare, insurance, just absolutely everywhere. It's really cool to see. So now into the new stuff, now that the obligatory marketing slides are out of the way. So the notable features that we have in the 15.2 release, it's a bit of a weird release, this one. It was penciled in to be released just as the global environment came under a bit of an interesting scenario. So this was going to be a small release dedicated to systems engineers and the types of people who like doing work with math and simulation. And we're going to get that out the door and then focus on towards version 16. But all of a sudden, everyone in the entire world needed to have some way of working remotely, staying connected with their teams, working from their home offices, and still trying to get the job done on a day-to-day basis. So I've taken a lot of version 16 features and backported them into 15.2 that revolve around a lot of the collaboration tools and more tools for helping you stay connected with your teams. And if that stuff interests you, then tomorrow morning at the same time, this time, our communications manager, Scott Hebbard, will do a presentation solely on the collaboration features that we have inside Enterprise Architect, and just how you can use the tool and the suite to remain connected. But today we'll have a look at what we've introduced in 15.2. So the release is split up into three main areas: the collaboration features, features to explore and visualize your model information, and of course the maths and simulation features, which were penciled in to be the main release. So as far as the collaboration features go, all about bringing the teams together, keeping them on the same page, keeping them working, keep the modeling process alive and healthy while we're all disconnected. To begin that, we've improved the chat and instant messaging capabilities of Enterprise Architect. So extended the chat to be one-on-one conversations. So now I can directly talk with members of my team, members of management on a one-on-one basis, and that's all within the model. Previous to that, we did have team-based chat features, so groups of teams could all communicate with each other. But now it promotes a really highly focused real-time model-based discussion, so everything is within that model. Coupled with that is a new notification system, so you can quickly and easily see when a new chat or discussion comes in. So I'm working along here, and you can see I've got a little actor, it's got a little voice pop up. So this user's person is trying to communicate with me. As soon as I click on them, I get this turquoise sort of box around it, and that shows that this is the person that I'm focused on while using the new collaborations window. And we'll take a look at that down later in this presentation. So this can be set up using the support collaboration option, which is a new diagram properties option, and enables the elements to have a visual notification when new chats and discussions arrive. So to set that up, all we do is just go into the diagram properties. We select the elements part of that properties page, and you'll notice down here we have the support collaboration box with options to collaborate against an alias, against a lock-in user, or both. What that means is that we set up an actor. In this case, user details of my login is T. O'Reilly. I can add that to the alias field of an actor, and that actor on that diagram behaves as me. So I can use it to read my notes. I can use it to select somebody else to directly communicate with them. So it is a really visual modeling based way of communication. With the locking user, if I'm managing a team of say 500 people, I don't really want to go in and set up each one of these individually. So I can ask the user to come in, select their actor, and then just lock it to themselves, and the same would apply on that particular diagram. So we have a new collaborations window, which sort of groups together the current and history of the communication that I've had. So it's a running history and a moment-to-moment changes of those 4 real central aspects of the communication. So the reviews, discussion, comments, and the chat. So with the reviews, it's current historical access to the active reviews that are in the model. The discussions, so I can monitor team discussions around the stuff that I'm interested in. Comments is a new tab that we've added for particular users to provide a comment or a suggestion on an element. So it's sort of less formal than a discussion or review, but a bit more formal than a direct chat. So it's just a way of providing information against a particular element. And then chat, so we can see the most recent chats and a history of chat between an individual or a group there. So we've streamlined and improved the review section of Enterprise Architect as well. So it has a nice, cleaner user interface with extra filtering configurations to allow you to search and find reviews that may be of interest. We now have the ability to lock a review by status. What that means is if you have a status of a review, it might be approved, waiting for review, pending, cancel, etc. At any point when a review hits that status, it can be locked. So for example, if we set lock a review when it's complete, then after all the reviewers have marked that review as complete, the whole review gets locked then. And what that does is preserve that decision-making process for future references. So in 10 years' time, we want to come back and figure out why our aircraft fuselage color property holder, which is the example on the screen there, is the way it is. We can see that the review process, the thought process that everyone's gone through to reach that point, and it hasn't been changed since then because it has been locked, so no one has accidentally overwritten it. We also have a visual identifier for locked reviews as well, so a little exclamation mark pops up next to the review there. We also have updated the Manage Review window. So that has a combination of all the elements that are in the review, the approvers list, what the review topics are, and they're all selectable and you can click through them. So browsing through each of those will switch the Collaborate Windows context to reviews as well. So it really brings all information in the model that's apparent up in your face at once, so you can see what's happening. Then you can filter the reviews using the show by status as well. So if you want to see just the ones that have been proposed, you can have it there. All the ones that have been complete, you can see them as well. That's the standard sort of searching that you have in most of the list boxes inside Enterprise Architect. So onto the Explore and Visualize section of the presentation. So we've got new tools for exploring your model, getting around, finding the elements you need, the traceability between them. Finding anything that's in progress, so stuff that you're working on, stuff that you have been working on, what's next do I need to do, and also new tools for visualizing information. So the first part that we've added in EA 15.2 is the focus window. Now the focus window allows you to rapidly move through the model, but it's a combination of 5 other tabbed views, some that are new, some that are existing. So the first one of that is the model views. So model views is something that's been in Enterprise Architect for quite a while, and that allows you to do custom searches, favorites lists, quick navigation to specific areas. You can set up slideshows and things in there. So really handy for auxiliary type ways of keeping track of your model and your model elements. We have a quick find, which is a simple search to find elements and diagrams if you need to find something in the model quickly, save opening up the full search view and going from there. We have the traceability view, or the trace view. So this has been a dialog in EA for quite some time, and I believe one of the more useful features that we have in EA. So this provides a dynamic traceability view of any element within your model. So as soon as you select an actor or a class or a use case or what have you, it will show you everything that's connected to and everything that's connected to that. So you can quickly see the usage of a particular element throughout your entire model. We have a new recent list, so you can see recent elements from the last day, or something's been changed from the last 3 days, 7 days. Recent diagrams, documents, discussions, reviews, changes, defects, anything that you want to track down that has changed recently. You can find that with the recent tab. And finally, we have a revisit tab of the focus window. So the revisit tab gives you anything that you have opened and closed. So for example, I'm working through my day, I'm opening up a diagram, I'm editing it, closing it, moving on to the next one, doing some more changes, open up the calendar, open up my model mail, close them, move on to the next one, do some coding, close that. Each of those windows, files, or diagrams that I've closed will then now show up in the revisit list. So quite easy to get back to things that you've already been working on. The inspector window. So the inspector window, it removes the element browser from the project browser. Now the element browser was something that we released in version 15, and it brought the properties of an element to the forefront of the modeling capabilities. You could find that stuff, but we made it much easier in 15 to get access to it. What we found is there is a need to actually have the project browser and the element browser open at the same time. And we found that's really useful for staying in context and navigate the model. It's context to navigate the model, sorry. That way you can browse the model, instantly update the inspector window with the current element features. So the inspector element tab has things like the relationships for your element, all the discussions, requirements, constraints, files, testing that's associated with that particular element. As we know, EA being a first-class modeling tool, it's more than just a box and a line on a diagram, and it has all this other stuff around it that really tells the story about what these elements are. So it's good to have that in the foreground as well to see what you're working on. It is context sensitive, so regardless of whether you change context in the project browser, in the diagram, in search lists, or anywhere else, you will get that information on that particular element that you have context on. So quite easy to see that stuff. It's also integrated with the external elements. Now, external elements come from the ProCloud server integrations. So for example, you can link up an enterprise architect model to things like Doors or Jira or ALM or ServiceNow, or a whole bunch more. Bugzilla is another one. I think there's a good 13 or 14 applications that we have built-in integrations for. And that allows you to inspect the external elements properties from within the inspector window next to the element. So you can create an element that's a representation of an element in the external system. So for example, for Jira, we might have a requirement in EA that is actually a direct link or representation of a requirement that is in the Jira system. Now with the external elements tab on the inspector window, we can see all those Jira properties and status updates and changes from within that model. So really cool to keep track of your external elements there too. Another thing we've added to help describe information or to visualize information in Enterprise Architect 15 is dynamic charts. So it's an all new JavaScript library to describe the charts, the types, the data that goes into them, and the styling. All these charts are filled via scripts. So you can get down and really create some very, very beautiful looking charts and graphs from that. The charts are refreshed whenever a diagram's opened up, so you'll always have the latest information there. And they can be edited using the behavior code editor, which is something new and improved that we've put into 15.2, and I'll go into detail with that just a little bit later on. You always could edit behavior code, but we've made it nicer. So scripts run automatically to refresh those diagrams on load. So for an example, we have a very nice 3D wireframe surface chart up on screen. Now this has been populated by a script, a chart, but the real advantage of this stuff comes later on when we look at the new simulation capabilities. So we'll leave this here and we'll come back and have a look at it in just a moment to find out why it's so cool. Speaking of charts and graphs, we have now a new diagram view called Dashboard Views. You could always create dashboards with inside Enterprise Architect by creating chart elements, and then you could manually sort of arrange them on screen to have the look and feel that you want. However, now Enterprise Architect will help you. So we have a dashboard view diagram layout style. So it automatically sorts and lays out the charts and graph elements on a diagram. So really cool for creating reports or track your KPIs or metrics, etc. Many options to choose from a layout perspective. So you can have a continuous style, so you can just keep scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, and your charts just keep loading as you go down. You can have it scrolling horizontally or vertically. You can have a single chart on it that makes it look like a single chart covers a whole view, sort of like an Excel single tab view page chart thing. And you can manually swap the chart positions if required as well. So if I'll just pull up an example, here we have a very blue looking dashboard, which shows the different months of the year. So January, February, March, April, May, June, April, May, July. So I've missed June. So if June wanted to be there, it might be down the bottom. I can just drag that into the place where July is down the bottom here, and EA will automatically rearrange it to be in the positions that I want. So quite flexible from that perspective. Here's an example of a single chart taking up entire view as well. So regardless of whether I zoom in or zoom out on this one or make the diagram view larger or smaller, this chart will fit exactly into the viewable area, which sort of makes it much nicer to view that sort of information. We've also included the Google icon library updates. So much needed for those who are mapping out sort of Google Cloud platform architecture diagrams. They're all available from the Model Wizard. So the Model Wizard is a repository of pre-built diagrams that we have, models and diagrams that we have that you can select from, browse through, pick the ones that you want, and then just drop them straight onto your screen. So from that perspective, there are over 250 image assets available, and then from that you can build as many different cloud architectures as you wish. So anyone doing any sort of planning for moving their infrastructure to the cloud, both on the Google and on the AWS side, we have icon libraries for that. over 350 image assets for the AWS icon library as well. So again, really cool for modeling the Amazon Web Service architectures. But just some useful tools to help you there. We've got some updates to the way you can view your daemon rules. So we now have cross-tab support for decision tables, so to be able to take sort of multiple variables and chart them against each other. We also have additional features for moving rows up and down, merging cells if you need to, and highlighting related rows when simulating. So for anyone who's doing any daemon work, then it just got a little bit easier from the way you can view your rules. And finally, or second to finally, we have there a section on our mathematical tools for simulation. And as I said at the start, this was what 15.2 was going to be about before we added the extra stuff. So thanks for waiting another 6 to 8 weeks to get all the other stuff in. But yeah, so the mathematical tools for simulation, we have greatly expanded the tools available for systems engineers, people who are doing simulation. It really has come leaps and bounds from where we were to couple that modeling and simulation. So the core of what we've done is introduced the solver classes. The solver classes are a JavaScript construct which allows you to invoke the mathematical functions from tools like MATLAB and Octave. It's a simple structured solver API, so you can reuse them with different solvers, and you can reuse them with different areas. And they can be linked directly to running simulations inside Enterprise Architect. So they are designed to be also, because they're JavaScript, also designed to be accessible from people who are doing model-based JavaScript add-ins. So any add-in developers out there who are using the new model-based approach that we released in version 15, then now you have the power of accessing MATLAB and Octave by them as well. So the MATLAB solver, so you can integrate directly in with the MATLAB API, and it utilizes MATLAB's calculation and charting functions. So for example, we have on screen a state machine there that has some mathematical formula associated with it. When we run the simulation, the mathematical equations get passed out to MATLAB to be solved, and then the charts and results are brought back into EA to display on screen. Similarly, we've created an Octave solver as well. So it's an alternative to MATLAB to many MATLAB functions, and I do believe it's an open source variant of it. Integrates with the Octave interpreter to use the Octave's functions for the same thing to crunch those numbers. So the MATLAB integration we have, so it connects via the MATLAB API and is utilized by Enterprise Architects, simulations, and scripts. So for any script or simulation you have, you can actually take advantage of MATLAB's mathematical computational power and solving power and get that information back. As I said, it's done through those solver classes. Alternatively, you can export the model to Simulink, Simscape, and or Stateflow to open up and run directly within those tools. So Simulink for SysML simulations. You can now use Simulink to enhance your SysML simulations. So basically translate a SysML model into a Simulink format and then automatically run that simulation, plotting the outputs of the selected variables and then getting that information back into Enterprise Architect. You can open up the EA generated Simulink file directly in Simulink to fine tune the simulation. So if you want to change the simulation settings or you want to change the functionality at all, then you can definitely do that. So here's an example here where we have a SysML model on the left-hand side down below. It's a block diagram there that gets passed to an internal block diagram that has a bunch of settings defined for the mathematical equation we'd like to solve. Then we pass that through the simulation window up here. We're in the simulation configuration area, pass the Simulink with the go button, and then we'll get back a nice, cool wave result of the mathematical equations there. Speaking of the model wizard, there are patterns for common built-in simulation built-in Simulink library blocks, so you can just drag and drop them on to build up your simulation. Alternatively, you can use custom blocks with the new SysPhs stereotype parameters, and we'll take a look at what that SysPhs stuff is in a moment. Simscape integration. So MATLAB has an add-on for Simulink, which is called Simscape. So MathWorks has it's about three levels deep as far as the add-ons go from a Simscape. So Simscape is used to model and define physical systems. So you can use that the Simscape extension to Simulink. So you translate your SysML internal block diagram to a MATLAB Simscape format. The components in your model represent physical objects. The flows in your model represent physical substances. So for example, water or electricity or energy passing through a circuit. So now you can model and simulate physical systems out of Enterprise Architect using these extensions. Similarly, for state machines, you can utilize MATLAB's Stateflow. So that allows you to use a state machine to guide a SysML simulation where the underlying simulation requires state-driven logic. Now, what does that mean? That basically means that if you are, say, modeling a thermostat or a heater, you're not just crunching numbers to say when what happens when the heater turns on and off. There's a really physical thing that changes. So the heater turns on, it warms up, then it starts blowing air out. Then at some point, when the thermostat hits, it goes into a cool down phase. From there, it either turns off or it turns on again, based on whether it needs to warm up the room again and the simulation is still running. So you can use the state machines to really get that state-driven logic into your simulations for Stateflow. GNU Octave Advanced Math. So we touched on Octave earlier, but Octave is an open source project, MATLAB alternative. It's a rich library of mathematical functions that you can call upon from within Enterprise Architect. So in this example here, we've created an Octave solver in JavaScript, and then we've used Octave to solve that equation. So it's a square wave and a fast forward transform that comes back out of that. If anyone's sort of interested in viewing some of these on our website, on the 15.2 website, we do have examples of most of these. So you can get a feel on what's being passed and what's coming back. In 15.2, we've also expanded on our existing open Modelica support. So we extended support for Modelica's capabilities. So open Modelica had a bunch more stuff that we weren't utilizing that now we are. We've integrated the SysPhs standard for defining constraints and variables in the SysML blocks. Previously, this has been done in the simulation configuration for Open Modelica, but now it can be done on the diagram. So you can show on your block diagrams in Open Modelica, you can show your block diagrams in Open Modelica connection editor. You can reference any existing Modelica library blocks, or you can customly define your own ones using what we have and the SysPhs stuff there. Also, the Allison notes are visible in the Open Modelica connection editor. So there's a much more tighter connection between Enterprise Architect and Open Modelica there. So Open Modelica and the SysPhs. So the SysPhs patterns are ready for simulation in Open Modelica. So you can just drag and drop them out of the project browser or the model wizard and use them directly with Open Modelica. You can view SysML components within inside Open Modelica. So you can see on screen a lot's covered there. We have a resistor, two resistors, and an op-amp element there. And the same thing being translated across into an Open Modelica view. You can view and simulate those plots. So what is SysPhs? I mentioned it a couple of times. It's a new standard out of the OMG, the Object Management Group. So it's a standard for integrating systems model with mathematical tools, which is quite handy for the release that we've just had. So you can stereotype variables and constraints within a simulation and assign options to those variables. Why this is good is because all of a sudden the configuration for your simulations is now model-based. Previously in Enterprise Architect, they were in a non-standard simulation configuration window. Now that they're model-based, they can be exported, they can be shared, they can be backed up and reviewed, etc. It's just a much more cleaner approach to have them model-based. The constraints and variables have their own compartments in the systems diagrams as well, so you can actually see that information. So for an example, we have a block diagram here, and this is the little component now for the SysPhs constraints for your simulation. So you can see we're setting amplitude and frequency on our sine wave here in a model-based approach as opposed to doing it in one of the simulation configuration areas. Around all this, given that there's a lot of code and scripts that are to do with it, we've actually enhanced our code editor inside Enterprise Architect 15.2. So now we have a single code editor for all behavioral models. If you've ever done any behavioral scripting for Enterprise Architect, whether it be state machines or activity diagrams or etc., you would know that you previously had to bring up the properties for every single behavior every time you did it. So open up, change it, close it down, select a new element, properties, open up, change it, close it down. Not the most cleanest way of approaching it. Now it's a single code editor that has the ability to swap and change and have all the information in the one place without losing focus. So the new code editor there includes a structure tree for navigating your code and allows you to edit the child element behavior and click down and use it as an index as well. So just an example, opening up here. So we have a bunch of behaviors on different elements here, and all we need to do is just click down each of these and we'll get focus on our code window. So no closing, no opening, no floating windows. It's all in the nice code editor area. Now I said we'd come back to this one, and this is us coming back now. So the dynamic charts that we spoke about earlier, one of the really cool things you can do with them is populate them via simulations. Obviously our simulations are quite code-based. So that code and script base you can then use to drive the outputs of those simulations into dynamic charts and graphs. Why is this cool? Well, saving the results of a simulation in a chart and graph means they're really easily includable into reports, into the web-based visualization tools we have like Prolaborate or WebEA, and allows you to share the simulation results really easily with stakeholders. So if I want to send a simulation result to a manager or someone who is less technical or is less inclined to want to see or install simulation tools of his own, then I can definitely do that by just showing him the charts there. So for example, again, another state machine here where we've simulated air travel through different parts of Australia, and we can get the charts and results of when how many flights have been scheduled, how many visitors are coming to those airports, how many hours and kilometers airplanes have traveled in that time. And I can see that quite easily just looking at the charts from that. Now, what would be a maths update in Enterprise Architect without the inclusion of a world-renowned math library? So we're including, or have included the SysPhs. I'm not sure if someone can correct me on the correct pronunciation of that, but the SysPhs math library has been tightly and fully integrated into EA's JavaScript engine. So now EA's JavaScript supports advanced integrated math capabilities that come from this library. So there's over 400 high quality mathematical routines that you can get access to from that scripting engine. So it really does take the engineering and systems models to the next level. So that's a quick overview of what we have in version 15.2, and I reckon I'm 2 minutes over my 30-minute outline, but if you like, I'd like to take you through some of the ProCloud Server beta that we've just released as well.
I think, Tom, we should be really good to go. I think there's people are quite keen. Please proceed.
No worries. Okay. Well, One thing we did release last week, as you would imagine, is also the upgrades to the Pro Cloud Server. So a lot of this stuff that we've done requires the Pro Cloud Server middleware for communication. What is the Pro Cloud Server? For those who don't know, Pro Cloud Server is a middleware component that we release here at Sparx Systems, and it is the core component between all the communication and collaboration tools that we have here at Sparx Systems. So it's the backbone of things like the Prolaborate of WebEA. It allows really seamless, quick access to repositories. It allows the integration with Enterprise Architect repository to all the external tools. So it's a really, really valuable software component that if you're not using already, I would suggest taking a look at. It is a middleware component, so it does need to be installed on a server somewhere. It is called the Pro Cloud Server, but it can definitely be installed on-premise as well. Can be inside your network, inside your firewall, and use it to facilitate that communication. So what have we done to upgrade that? Well, WebEA has been one of the main things that's been given an upgrade. We've improved the flexibility of WebEA's property view. So traditionally, you've seen all the property stuff inside Enterprise Architect, so you can view all the elements, all their links, their relationships, their files, their resources, similar to the inspector view we saw earlier. But now you can turn what you want to see on and off inside a nice, handy configure properties view. You can hide the empty sections. You have the ability for direct editing of discussions, notes, etc. From that. Model Mail has now been included within WebEA. So Model Mail is an internal model-based mail system. That's probably where the name came from. That we have inside Enterprise Architect. So I use that on a daily basis to communicate with my team, pass information back and forward, provide links inside the model to different model elements. But now I can see that through a web-based interface. So I can view it on my mobile phone. I can view it when I'm out of the office just to keep tabs on what's happening. And can be turned on and off depending on what you want to see there. So available Model Mail in WebEA. It's just an example. Pretty cool. The daemon decision table stuff that we looked at earlier, you can now view the daemon decision tables inside WebEA. So you can view the tables of rules as a row, rules as a column, or use the new rule as a crosstab that we saw earlier in the presentation. So a couple of examples of that. The daemon expressions are visible inside WebEA. We've streamlined the interface for WebEA as well. So custom searches have been improved. Search settings preserved between different searches. So for example, you search for a specific element, hit the search button. That information is still there if you want to refine that search. If your search is empty, returns you back to the page where you're on, being a modal dialog. So WebEA's object creation and editing. So WebEA has a limited form of element creation. So you can create a specific set of elements like classes and requirements and a few others, I believe. So that's just been made a little bit nicer as well. So you can create multiple elements of the same type quite easily now. So previously when you did it, you'd create an element, it would close, you have to search for it and open it up. Now, being a modal dialog, you can create many elements on the fly and then finally close the window down, similar to the save and new feature of Enterprise Architect. We also support localized page updates as well. So if you are creating a whole bunch of elements, it'll remember where you are from a selection in a list, so it doesn't reset that list as well. For the Pro Cloud Server, we've updated the floating license server capabilities of the Pro Cloud Server. This has been a highly requested one. So we now have the ability to allocate one or many Active Directory security groups to floating license server groups, which makes setting up external access to a lot of people much easier. And you can do that based on their Active Directory group. So no user ID required to log into EA. and you can specify exactly what their license entitlements are based on what Active Directory security group they're in. So much easier to manage enterprise level of users. The floating license server configuration has been made a bit easier as well in both WebEA and the configuration client. We now provide a whole bunch of predefined lists to select from to remove the complexity of setting up people. So if you are a ProCloud server administrator, your job has just become a bit easier there. It's been nice. So that's it from me, except to say that the beta for both the ProCloud server and EA 15.2 is available from the Sparx Systems website. So a couple of links there, sparxsystems.com EA152 or sparxsystems.com PCS042. Both are available from the main menus and the homepage as well. If you'd like to download and have a play around with the latest and greatest, if you are a registered user. Another brief overview of everything I've covered today, and here's my details again. So thank you very much for spending your days, afternoons, and evenings and mornings with me today. Great pleasure to talk with you all. Sorry I can't do it in person. I like doing that, but hopefully get to see you all again at some point around the world in the next couple of years.
Thank you very much, Tom. This is a really great start to the summit, and thanks for a very comprehensive overview of 15.2. We have a number of questions. Maybe we have a few minutes left for the Q&A that we can discuss here, and the questions have also been added to the Teams channel, and there is conversations already happening there. So if you're okay, I will start with a few questions. The first one was from Peter. Does the focus view support dragging items to the diagrams?
That's an amazing question, Peter. I'm not sure. I don't think I've ever tried it. I'll give it a go. Depends how long I've got to do something. I'll find out, Peter, and I'll answer that question over in the team section afterwards. I'll hang around there for a little bit. Based on the stuff there, possibly, and if it doesn't, it's probably a really good feature request.
Okay, thanks, Tom. So the question is in the Teams channel as well, so we can follow up after the session. And there was a question from Abel and Takeshi where they said, interesting to have access to the simulation examples.
Yes, yeah. So we are building a library of simulation examples that will be made available to everyone there. We have built that up over the period of development, and a few beta testers have been given access just to test the functionality to do that. But they will be made available in a new, almost like an example model area where we're going to have multiple different types of example models available for multiple different features, but definitely simulation is one that's along the development path for that. So yes.
Okay, thanks, Tom. And Ryan asks, does MATLAB state machine simulation support the full UML state machine definition supported in EA?
I believe so. Again, I'd probably need to defer to one of the developers for it, but I can't see us just doing a half implementation of that. I'd need to check. I'm not sure.
Okay, so again, the question is available in the Teams channel as well. We have Sid who asks, is there a SaaS version of EA 15.2 available?
EA itself, through partners, you can get access to EA in a SaaS sort of environment. EA is still very much install on-premise application, but there are partners who do offer SaaS versions. I'm not sure whether they have set up 15.2 beta as part of their offering yet, but we can probably contact a few and see what they have if you like.
Okay, great. Thanks. Maybe we are about to finish the session. One last question. I think there was a couple of people asking the same. When is the actual release expected?
Yeah, good question as well. When it's when it's right. So obviously, from my perspective, I've been using version 15.2 for about 5 or 6 months. It's quite solid. I've even started working on version 16 now as my desktop application. We will run a beta period. If there are no outstanding issues that come back, then it'll be quite soon. We're just out there for people to have a look at to see, you know, if there's nothing major upsettingly with it, but at the moment it looks pretty good. So I can't see it being too far away.
Okay, thanks, Tom. I think we have more people having discussions in the Teams channel as well. We thank you once again for such a great session. And we thank you all attendees and audience for the participation and joining the EA Global Summit. We will have Tom for some time in the Teams channel to answer your questions or have some discussions. And the video of this session will also be made available to you post the conference, and we'll be notifying you once it's available. We thank you all once again for joining and your precious time. We hope to see you in the upcoming sessions. There are a number of sessions in this conference post this, and there are some interesting speakers from across the world as well. So please do check the other events that's coming up, and please do join. Thank you once again, and thanks, Tom.